If there's a thing that WWE does better than anyone else, it's milking their nostalgia. They love to use that nostalgia to make events feel even bigger than they already are. A great example of this that I'm shocked they haven't done more often is WrestleMania All Day Long. Before it was a 2-day, 14-hour extravaganza, WWF amped up WrestleMania 16, aka WrestleMania 2000, with matches from Mania's past, behind-the-scenes stories, and full coverage of WWF Fan Access. This is a look back at WrestleMania All Day Long. The reason I wanted to bring this pre-show out of the mothballs is because it's pretty special to me. If you're a longtime viewer of the channel, then you might be aware that I didn't have cable as a kid, which is why Shotgun Saturday Night and Worldwide are two of my favorite shows. But that changed in late 1999 when my family got DirecTV. As I remember it, my dad gave me a choice. We could order the Rumble or No Way Out, or we could order this WrestleMania All Day Long event that included WrestleMania anyway. Of course I went with watching wrestling all day. It was a great day. My cousins that liked wrestling were coming over for Mania, and once my grandfather heard, "Oh, come over whenever, it'll be on all day," he came over at 11 a.m. Better than hanging out with my grandma all day, I guess. So with the sappy memories out of the way, let's take a look back at this show before the show from, Jesus Christ, 25 years ago. It's April 2nd, 2000, and it's noontime on the East Coast. The show starts and we get a video package with Mania moments and a voiceover talking about how awesome it is. We're welcomed to the show by Michael Cole and Ivory live from the Anaheim Convention Center, just an hour before WWF Fan Access kicks off. They play up the global crowd that has descended upon Anaheim and will be bursting through those doors in 60 minutes. They throw to Kevin Kelly and Lillian Garcia at the Pond, who will be getting interviews throughout the event. And we get right into the history of WrestleMania, as Cole puts over the risk of Mania I, and we get an interview from Vince where he talks about the whole undertaking. I'm pretty sure these interviews we see throughout the show were done specifically for All Day Long. They're a really nice addition. Hearing Jerry Briscoe and Howard Finkel talk about how it all came together was really nice. Like, Briscoe set up the closed circuit locations around Florida. I didn't know that. I like that I know that now. The show has a clear template for covering Mania's past. Each Mania segment opens with a montage of clips from the event. Every match gets at least a couple seconds. That's usually followed up with 2 or 3 matches from the show that gets featured with extended time. In this case, the first featured match is Wendy Richter vs. Leilani Kai for the Women's Championship, featuring the pre-match promos in the last third of the match airing. And of course, the main event, which gets a full build-up video package. It's a really good way to catch up and know exactly how big a deal Mr. T and Hogan teaming up was at the time. We also get all the pre-match hoopla and a condensed version of the match showing just the high points. Honestly, for this type of program, these segments are done perfectly. If you'd never seen any of these WrestleManias before, then you got all the important bits that you'd want to see anyway. Like, did we need to see Tito Santana versus the Executioner in full? Absolutely not. Then we start the tour of WWF Fan Access. Look at these race cars! Back to Mania I talk, and we get a clip of WWF director Kerwin Silfies. I don't know, I just like when he pops up. Vince says he was depressed after WrestleMania I because it was over and he had to top it next time. He said he often gets depressed after big events. Vinny, go to a therapist, dude! We move on to Mania II, the 3-city disaster. This one they cover with a Michael Cole narration talking about the highlights from each city. It's mostly fine, but there is some whoppers in there.
Even Hollywood celebrities wanted a taste of the largest pay-per-view of its day. It was a global amphitheater that set the standard for events to come.
This time we visit Mania II in 4 segments. The featured matches were Moolah vs. Velvet McIntyre in full. It's terrible. The whole second half of Macho Man vs. George the Animal Steele, which is not great. And a clipped version of what Cole referred to as the main event, Roddy Piper vs. Mr. T in the boxing match. I mean, it was a main event. In between the segments, we get an interview with the fabulous Moolah where she takes credit for inventing women's wrestling. Are you kidding me?
First came on board, I mean, there weren't a lot of lady wrestlers. You basically started ladies wrestling.
Yes, that's true.
I want to thank you very much for being the first woman of wrestling, because you started it all for all of us, and I know we all thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
Only issue I have with this portion of the show is the Moolah interview, where Cole and Ivory make Moolah out to be the first woman wrestler ever. Like, is she important to the history of the business? And the WWF in general for women's wrestling? Yeah, definitely. But let's not completely rewrite history. Aside from that super dorky gripe, I have no problem. That's our number one over. Then we get Triple H, Howard Finkel, and a WWF cameraman talking about how awesome WrestleMania is. Doors are open for access. Obviously, WrestleMania III is next, and they pretty much dedicate the whole next hour to it. If you've ever seen anything WrestleMania related, it's pretty much all the usual points. 93,000 in attendance, Hogan slams Andre, Savage and Steamboat was great, etc., etc. I think it goes without saying that those matches were featured. They also mix in a Linda McMahon interview that's partially kayfabe. She does reveal that Aretha Franklin didn't get to the arena until about 30 minutes before the show, so she didn't even get to do a sound check. So she showed up and gave that performance almost immediately after getting out of the car. Incredible. We also get an interview with Stacey Pauly from Jax looking at the history of WWF action figures and a look at some that were coming to the market.
But again, just show the fans one more time what these things look like, folks. Are these available now?
These will be available in the summer.
It's going to be great. I cannot wait. Stacey, thanks for joining us. It has been educational.
After an Andre tribute, we get back to the access floor to check in at the WWF home video booth with Hillbilly Jim. Hillbilly talks about how massive WrestleMania III was, and we get his six-man tag match from the show. Michael Cole loves DVDs.
We have DVDs, you well know. I know you're a big favorite of DVD,
I
Mike.
love DVDs.
DVD's great because you can see all the different angles and stuff.
The next hour kicks off with Lillian Garcia interviewing the Cat before her match with Terry Runnels. Cole interviews Basil DeVito and another WWF executive, Bob Collins, to talk about the evolution of the fan experience. It's pretty cool that you can hear a match happening in the background on the access floor.
I'll tell you, this access this year here at the convention center is wonderful. There's a match going on in the ring right now, the Crunch and Munch Arena over to my
And
left.
thousands of people are looking at it right now.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And that throws to a fun package about the happenings of fan access. Basil DeVito talks about how Mania IV ended up at Trump Plaza, and we get about 25 minutes of highlights from the tournament. Back to Cole and Ivory has made an outfit change. Not sure if you've noticed, but she's now in her ring gear, and she's threatening to get Cole in the ring later on. They move on to a quick look at WrestleMania V with Run DMC's performance as the soundtrack, and honestly, it's so fucking good, I love it. And it's a perfect segue to a clip from Run DMC's Kings of Rock DX video. My absolute favorite version of the DX theme. And Ivory does this dance. Bruce Pritchard joins them to discuss Mania 5 since he had one of the more memorable segments on the show. They feature Warrior vs. Rick Rude, and Bruce puts over fan access. They also keep peeking in at the Anaheim Pond with nothing but the ring in it, and it's so gorgeous, I love it. Before they throw to the Mega Powers exploding, we get one last brother love, I love you, that he dedicates to his kids, including Kane.
And I'm going to do one special one for Stephanie, Amber, and Kane at home. I love you.
Yeah!
On the other side, we get another Michael Cole Whopper.
Hulk Hogan was the man, not only in the wrestling ring, in Hollywood, he was just the all-American superstar. We asked Vince McMahon, the creator of Hulk Hogan, about the evolution of this superstar, Hulk Hogan.
This Vince interview about Hogan is pretty interesting. It's still during the Monday Night War, but Hogan's WCW future is in a bit of a limbo. Vince is talking about him pretty highly, but still with a sense of ownership over his success. Godfather and Jericho open the fourth hour talking about how awesome WrestleMania is. Then we get Ivory in the production truck where we're treated to seeing a pyro test. Of course, Edge and Christian talk about the show since it was in Canada, and Edge tells his story about being there live. It's a really nice story. Cameraman Chris Tafori talks about working with Steve Allen in one of my favorite Mania bits ever, where he's playing the piano with the Bolsheviks in the shower. It's so goddamn funny. Ivory gets Cole in the ring at the Crunch and Munch Arena on the access floor, She gets Maggle in a camel clutch and he does some Lex selling.
How does it feel, Michael?
Ivory.
Listen, we're going to go back to the Sky Dome and look at some mixed tag matches. And I think we would make a good pair, Michael.
After the featured clips of the intergender tag match in Hogan vs. Warrior, we get Pat Patterson and Vince talking about the results of the main event. Pat talks about how emotional Warrior was afterwards, and Vince talks about how Warrior's title run didn't work out. Hilarious. Sergeant Slaughter joins the show to talk about WrestleMania VII, obviously. Slaughter tells all the stories we've heard 100 times to this point, but this might have been the first time I actually heard them, so I'm sure my mind was blown in 2000. They feature the main event, but they really feature the Savage Elizabeth reunion. Hour 5 opens with the Dudleys, Edge and Christian, and the Hardys talking about Mania and how great it is to be on the show. I bet you that'd be a good triple threat tag match. Following that, we get a Mick Foley interview, and they actually bring up the criticism of Mick coming out of retirement so soon.
This return and your opportunity in the main event at WrestleMania has not been without its share of critics.
Oh, sure. I'd say 98% of the people are very, very happy to see Mick Foley back for another match.
Straight out of the Mick interview, we get Cole sitting with the WWF.com nerds going over some poll results. We then go to one of my top 5 manias of all time, WrestleMania VIII. It's such an underrated show in my opinion. It's got 3 really good matches and a couple more that are decent. And really, what else do you need? Unsurprisingly, they featured the double main event, Flair vs. Savage and Hogan vs. Sid. We keep chugging along to Mania IX and they show the behind the scenes footage from the event. This was the first time the footage had aired since it was originally planned to be used in a documentary that was later abandoned. Maybe it'll end up on the WWE Vault channel someday. It's really interesting. They hit all the highlights of that show, including JR and his toga, which leads to a JR interview back at the pond. The featured matches being Bret vs. Yoko and the post-match unpleasantness, but also, oddly enough, Perfect vs. Lex. Mania 9 isn't the best, so those were probably safe bets. I would have gone with Steiners vs. Head Shrinkers, but that's just me. Hour 6 kicks off with more interviews talking about how awesome WrestleMania is. Then we get to Cole and Ivory outside the arena hyping up the folks in line, including this dude in an XPW shirt. They are in Cali after all. They pitch to Mania 10 and we get a package of those matches set to a Men on a Mission wrap, with the ladder match Bret vs. Owen and Bret vs. Yoko getting the big features. Getting to Mania 11 now, and Cole and Ivory have made it inside the Anaheim pond to finish up the show. They feature LT vs. Bam Bam and Shawn vs. Diesel. So it was pretty much that WrestleMania special that Fox affiliates aired in '95. Hour 7, we get to Mania 12, another one of my favorites. Again, video package highlighting the undercard. They feature Piper vs. Goldust, Taker and Diesel, and of course the Iron Man match. Honestly, I know a lot of people hate on the Iron Man match, but it's one of my favorites. I get why people don't like it, the critiques are valid, but I love it. Some interesting bits in the Triple H interview where he suggests that Mania 12 was the start of the WWF getting some attitude. And looking at the show and roster, he's not too far off base. They also used Taker's awesome Ministry theme throughout the package for his match with Diesel. He wasn't that cool in '96. Cole and Ivory are now at ringside in the arena as we are 90 minutes away from bell time. They throw to the Mania 13 video package, giving the featured spots to Bret and Austin and Sid vs. Taker. Following that, we get a Jerry Lawler interview where he puts over Austin and the changes from the Attitude Era as a whole. Home stretch now as we've entered the final hour of Mania All Day Long. The last hour starts with Cole in the production truck reminding us that they're live on USA with Sunday Night Heat. Cole also mentions at least 6 times in the last 45 minutes that at 7:28 until 7:30, the feed will go black. But it's just a satellite glitch. Nothing is wrong with the pay-per-view, and he begs not to call your cable company. Everything is fine. He pleads us not to call. I like to imagine this was a warning from the cable providers. We get into WrestleMania 14, or as I like to call it, Scotty Mania. How original of me, since I was there live. Right above the entranceway. Somewhere around here. Jarrett's pyro was way hotter than you expect. That's like one of the major things that stands out to me for some reason. Kane vs. Taker and Austin vs. Shawn gets the heavy feature spots. They even get a bit into Shawn barging in on the post-show press conference. Triple H has a great line where he mentions Shawn was in so much pain that he was lying on the floor until he saw Vince on TV and jumped up and stormed into the conference room. And we've hit the final mania of this epic journey, WrestleMania 15. We get the usual highlights, and the big features go to X-Pac vs. Shane, Butterbean, and Rock vs. Austin 1. One last Vince interview where he says that WrestleMania has come full circle, and that the WWF superstars are now the celebrities that make the show special.
And what's ironic is that since then, we've done a complete 180, in that now the WWF superstars have taken their rightful place. They are the true celebrities.
We end the program with Cole and Ivory high above the pond as we head into WrestleMania 16. And that's WrestleMania All Day Long. This show, while it can be a bit repetitive and not filled with tons of new stories, it does give new perspectives, like from the camera guys and executives, people that we don't normally hear from. Overall, it's an interesting part of and way to chronicle WrestleMania history. Honestly, it's wild that they pulled it off as seamlessly as they did. Considering they had 3 live television productions going on that day, there's very few technical issues. It's an incredible feat to have All Day Long, Sunday Night Heat, and WrestleMania itself back to back to back. Nobody does television production quite like WWE. April 2000 was the perfect time to do something like this. I'm surprised they didn't do it again for Mania 20 or smaller versions for 25 or 30 or 40. Maybe WrestleMania 50 will get some sort of special event. Thanks for joining me on this trip down memory lane. Did you also watch this when it aired in 2000? Tell me all about it in the comments. And a special thank you to everyone that helped me obtain footage of the show. Specifically, Dustin Strong, Sean Clark, and my main man, Jay Hunter. I'm so appreciative of you guys coming to my rescue when I thought the file was gone forever. I'm also so thankful for the support from everyone in general when I thought I had to cancel this topic altogether. Be sure to support the channel by subscribing or by tracking us down on social media. Either here or here. I'm Scott from WrestleSpective. Watch wrestling, love wrestling. Thanks for watching.